morning, everyone. My name is AJ Waters. I'm a chief evangelist at Kahua. And for those of you who don't know, Kahua is a platform as a service for capital project management. What we mean by platform as a service is think of your phone. It runs out of the box, but you may dream up apps that we'd never thought of before. And so there's a low code, no code way to do that. But what we're going to do today is talk about reimagining utility infrastructure, both some challenges and some innovations. In the Midwest, many of you understand is a very challenging region between weather, between the age of some of our infrastructure, just the evolving regulations across the country. So that's some of the stuff that we're going to try to dive into today. And really, I'm going to turn that over to the experts here that are sitting with me. So what we'll do is we'll let them introduce themselves real quick. Name, who you work for, and one interesting fact about you outside of work. And I didn't prep you with that on purpose. And we'll just go right down the line. So Aze, you go first.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Aze Philly Bosey, Director of Engineering at Commonwealth Edison, the local power company in Chicago and Northern Illinois. My team is focused on grid modernization, so really timely topic of how we meet the challenges in the Midwest and provide reliable power to the residents of Illinois. One interesting fact about me, I like tennis shoes, I like sneakers, so.
Yes. I was going to comment on your shoe game. That's pretty nice.
Yeah, so we'll get along.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicholas Klein. I'm the Assistant Deputy Director of Operations for the Capital Development Board, where we oversee the vertical construction throughout Illinois on many public facilities. In terms of interesting fact, I did go on my first cruise to Alaska this year, so I was very excited. A little different weather than what we have here in Illinois.
Hey everybody, my name is Ricardo Maguillon. I'm the manager of the Air Inspection Division for Cook County's Department of Environment and Sustainability. So the type of work I do is we do air permitting for almost 10,000 businesses in suburban Cook County. So we have inspectors going in and out of industrial and commercial facilities, ensuring that they're in compliance with our local and state regulations. I also run a pollution prevention team it's a program called the BRIGHT program. We work with businesses on helping them reduce carbon emissions, lessen water usage, waste, pretty much everything you can think of in sustainability. And I suppose something interesting about me is that I write my own music. It's something a little bit different. I perform and write music.
All right, awesome. Okay, so starting off, this panel is talking about challenges and innovations. And I found that interesting that both words were in the title. But when you really think about it, in order to truly innovate, it usually takes a challenge to solve, right? And so we live in the Midwest. The last 5 years, we've seen some really weird challenges, depending on whether or not it's a pandemic, whether it's weird weather, crazy new regulations, whatever it might be. So Aze, what are you seeing as the number one challenge in utility infrastructure in the Midwest right now?
Good question. So from a utility perspective, I think the number one challenge is being able to provide reliable and resilient service in the face of all the challenges we're facing. So just thinking about the challenges we face on a day-to-day, the increase in severity of weather events. I think everyone that's local saw we had a weather event in July that produced 43 tornadoes within 24 hours. And if we look at the data, I think the record was 23 tornadoes within a 24-hour period. And we're going to continue to see these challenges as we continue to go. So climate change is real. It's going to happen. So looking at that, or even looking at physical and cyber threats, that's something we're continuing to see malicious actors intentionally gain access to critical infrastructure to wreak havoc. I think Lurie Children's Hospital, that was only recently we saw that, and I think they've just finally come out of it. Or we can look at, on the flip side, the rapid adoption of distributed energy resources, renewables coming online. Historically, utilities have been one-way power flow. Now we're going to see multi-direction power flows. How do we manage that? Or we can look at large new loads. Data centers. Illinois has seen an explosion in data centers, and that's a lot of load that we have to accommodate as these data centers come online. So when you put that all together, is understanding those challenges and how do you still stay reliable and resilient as an electric company.
So, what is one way you are all tackling resilience right now?
So with resilience, one of the things we are doing is really about investing in infrastructure, making systems as redundant as possible, and strengthening aging infrastructure. So one of the easiest ways I can say is the grade of construction has to change. So we're going with infrastructure that can withstand higher wind speeds, higher ice loading, understanding those specific situations and building infrastructure to match, or even undergrounding certain poles and wire. Historically, there were poles, overhead wires. We're undergrounding those. So those are some of the things we're doing to try to mitigate the impacts of the severe weather.
That's good. Underground specifically because of those high winds. Yeah. Ricardo, I did a little research on you. You were here, you went to the West Coast, and then you came back. Based on kind of that understanding, what is a challenge that you see in the Midwest that maybe is different from other parts of the country?
That's a good question, AJ. There's a lot that I think this nation has in common with each other when it comes down to climate resiliency, with really energy resiliency. And I think what's different out west compared to here is that there was when I was there some really good regulations together to help promote renewable energy infrastructure, so on and so forth. But I think a common challenge that we have with the West Coast is that we are challenged with a potential for an increased plug load if we were to electrify. Everyone has EVs. Everyone would get electric equipment over fuel burning equipment. There is a lot of work to ensure we have enough renewable energy on the grid to make sure that we can have enough to ensure we have enough there for everybody. And so we had to think through and strategize away in the Midwest to make sure that we're prepared when we get to that level of everybody getting an EV, everybody getting a new piece of electrified equipment, so on and so forth. We know it's going to be essential to move away from certain fossil fuel usage. But in order to make that work, we got to make sure that the utilities here are ready and prepared for that. So that's what I'm seeing here in the Midwest is probably the most important thing.
And you mentioned the BRIGHT program earlier. That's one way that you all are helping companies find ways to lower emissions. Are there other ways that you're helping people get to the renewable energy that's on the grid or increase the renewable energy on the grid?
We'll go back to the BRIGHT program because it's a good start. It's a good voluntary assessment program to let businesses know what they have to do. We have a Healthy Homes program that works with residents to help them electrify. So we're trying to get these resources out to both businesses and residents throughout at least Cook County to ensure that they have what they need educationally to know what they can switch to. And getting to understand sometimes electrifying is actually a better cost for them. Like it's cheaper sometimes to do this. But other things we're looking into, yes, we are regulators as well. I wouldn't say we've moved forward with, at least locally, with getting policies to change this, but we need to collaborate more with the state. There is CPRG funding that the state received recently that we'd like to talk to them about to see if we can help support with some of the financing that's needed. It's a bit expensive to switch over to renewable energy and electrified equipment right now. But if we bring that cost down quite a bit so everybody in the county and the state can help or can go ahead and make the change, then I think we've done something big. And by introducing the knowledge needed to these residents, these customers that are these utility customers, I think people are going to come around. And I think it's important for them to know now so that in the future they can purchase this EV without any concerns of it, not functioning properly.
Yeah, that's a good point. So you mentioned policy. Nicholas, there's a lot of policies out there, both locally and nationally, that are creating challenges or opportunities, depending on the policy. What are some of the ways that you're seeing policy maybe create some opportunities for the state?
So I'd say funding is a key avenue where opportunities are being created both at the federal and the state level in terms of clean energy. On the federal level, one of the notable recent legislation is the Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA. More specifically, on the state level, there is the Energy Transition Act, or the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, passed by the Illinois General Assembly and signed into law by Governor Pritzker, that set the foundation for the Stretch Energy Code, which has more of a focus on moving towards energy efficiency of that sorts. So funding on the opportunity side. On the challenge side, there is the things of just requirements themselves. All these different sources of funding have a lot of needs that need to be met in order to access and unlock the funding itself. Another thing with policy to keep in mind too is it doesn't run at the same pace as that this technology is developing itself. So even if a policy is enacted right now, it may need to change to keep up soon after. And oftentimes the rate of change for policy is not on the quick side, it's usually on the slower side. So trying to develop policies that not only serve the needs we know of now or maybe more backward looking, but also have some adaptability or flexibility to keep up with the rate of change of pace will be important as we move forward.
Yeah, it's crazy to think, because we're going to get to this question next, it's crazy to think many people set 2030 goals, and 2030 is 5 years down the road, like 5.5 years away at most, right? But the tech that will achieve 2030 goals might not have even been thought of yet, let alone developed. So on that note, Eze, you guys have some 2030 goals. One of them being 100% carbon-free power in the grid. What is one way you're chasing, like what's one innovative thing that you're after that might help achieve that goal?
So one of the things we're doing to really achieve that goal is investments in technology such as distributed energy resource management systems. And the reason I say that as innovation, because like I said, traditionally power flow has been one way. And as we start to incorporate more renewables on the system, we need to be able to manage that effectively and manage against adverse system conditions. So we're investing in technology such as DERMS, it was called, coupled with advanced sensors on the grid edge, coupled with advanced telemetry, so we can monitor and improve our system visibility across the entire system and manage the DERs that come online, so we can have them as effective as possible and optimized so we can really achieve that clean energy future.
And does everybody kind of understand what he means when he says energy flow has always been one way? Because when he first started talking to me about this, I had to really think about it for a second. But like he's talking about houses that have batteries in them, right? Refeeding the grid because their solar panels created an excess, things like that, right?
Yes, things like that. So when I say historically, we've had generating plants, we've had the fossil plants, the coal plants, the nuclear plants, and they generate the power. We're the consumers. Now that dynamics is going to shift. Now you're going to have consumers also being producers, right? So you're going to have that multi-directional power flow, and you need to be able to balance that and also have the capacity to host that.
Right. So, Ricardo, the county has 2030 goals as well. You kind of support those in a way, being one of the regulators. How are they achieving those goals, and what can you do to help innovate in that realm?
Yeah, good question there. So the county has been, I think, purchasing RECs, for instance, for the county buildings, but the work that I do is a little bit different. I do have a team that goes into these sites. We do permit roughly 10,000 facilities in suburban Cook. And when we go into these facilities, we take a look at air emissions in particular, like how many tons of greenhouse gas emissions is each of these industrial sites, how much are they emitting? We look at that. We look at criteria pollutants, the works. We have a lot of data over the last 4 or 5 years to tell us who the bigger polluters are. And with that, we also have lists of equipment inside of facilities. What we're noticing in a lot of industrial and commercial facilities alike is that in suburban Cook County, a lot of businesses are using pretty old equipment, very old, 20, 25 years old for processing. That makes it incredibly energy intensive. We have a lot of data for scope 1 emissions right now, just direct emissions. It's pushing 1 million tons of GHGs a year, something on that line annually. But that's not even considering, how much energy they're using, what the utilities see. So what we're trying to do is gather this data, this information, and then through programs like our pollution prevention program, address ways and opportunities that these businesses can actually greatly reduce their energy usage. It's not just switching out these pieces of equipment with something newer that's less energy intensive, but also educating on how to properly use them. Like, will the workers there be able to be trained, so on and so forth. So what we're seeing is an opportunity. Like, we're gathering data, we're seeing opportunities to make change for 10,000 businesses, but we do need support from the public and from utilities and others to help implement some of these best practices.
And just real quick, I'm going to do a quick time check because I think our agenda says we have 8 minutes left, but the timer up here is flashing at these guys that we have 3, and I wanted them to be okay that they got a couple more minutes. So kind of following up on all that, then Nicholas, to you, how can the Capital Development Board assist with some of these 2030 goals? And what can they do to maybe help guide people toward those same strategies?
Sure. So our really key focus is on actually 2050 with the state of Illinois' goals and target to be 100% clean energy free, but we need to make progress in order to reach that. And some of the areas Ricardo touched on it, one key area is energy efficiency. So there's a lot of older equipment and other things out there that could be replaced with something that works a lot better and operates from there. Another one is just looking at the landscape of technology. When we're dealing with clean energy, there isn't going to be a one-size-fits-all type solution. There's been a lot of research looking for some magical technology or something else that's going to solve all our problems. Haven't been found yet. So there's likely going to be an all of the above approach as well. You hear a lot of the more typical items like electric vehicles and charging stations for that and solar and things like that, but there might be other technologies that present themselves, be it hydrogen, other types of alternative fuel sources, things of that nature. So I think identifying ways to incorporate that into more of a larger picture view instead of certain use cases will be beneficial. And also looking at it not only from a normal operating standpoint, but as Eze mentioned, with the weather and other things, it seems like emergencies are popping up for facilities and projects quite often. So having a resource that supports clean energy, both from a day-to-day basis, but when something goes wrong, and having that infrastructure in place will be key as we consider all these different items.
Yeah. Just want to add something to that. I think we live in a world where finite resources, right? And IIJA and these federal funds have really been a game changer. At ComEd, we've really leveraged those funds, federal grants with the matches. So we were actually awarded from the NTIA, the Middle Mile grant, about $15 million. And we're working with the DOE on another grant that will soon be announced. But just knowing those funds are available, I actually urge people to really look into what's available from these federal funding opportunities and leverage them, because that's what they're there for.
Awesome. So I know these guys, they look like they're friendly. They all got the gray jacket memo, but we've got a power distributor, a regulator, and a financer up here. And sometimes they tend to not get along or agree on the decisions that are being made. So in an effort to talk a little bit about partnering as we wrap this up, Eze, what's one thing that ComEd is doing to better partner with regulatory agencies, with policies, like you said, chasing after some of that funding? What is one way ComEd is looking to be better partners in the industry?
I think one of the critical ways for us, which probably one of the most important, is more transparency. And you mentioned CEJA, the Climate, Equity, and Jobs Act that was passed, and it actually pushed for more transparency and required utilities to submit a 4-year outlook of future investments and what we plan to spend. And that was really one of the first steps in transparency, showing our planned investments over 4 years. And that also gives the opportunity to get feedback from regulators and other stakeholders on these investments, and also gives an opportunity for alignment. And alignment with other agencies if they have plans to leverage these resources, or if there are partnerships that can be born out of this forward-looking grid plan and transparency. So I think really it's about how we work together, let everyone's cards on the table, and we can try to align when possible.
That's perfect. And same question, Ricardo. Now you're over there policing, if you will, some of these people. What is one way that you can help to partner in this endeavor to chase these big goals?
I think it goes back to funding. Not just funding the actual equipment changes or best practices, but having partnering on things like assessments. I know I've mentioned Bright a few times, but we do have a pretty good relationship with both ComEd and NICOR, the utilities, where we actually work with each other to schedule assessments to go out and essentially consult with businesses on what they can do to reduce their emissions, their energy usage. So I think we need more partners like that can help us educate individuals that would otherwise go a different route. And with that, I mentioned funding first because I think what a lot of businesses, or even residential some housing infrastructure here is what they need and what they want is the money to implement some of these items or these best practices. So pairing the two seems to be helpful. I know we've worked with about 40 businesses already, some larger ones that really have worked on implementing some of these changes, and we probably wouldn't be able to do that without the utilities. So being able to partner like that on voluntary assessments is a good start, and I think we should continue it.
Awesome. And Ricardo mentioned partnering with the utilities, but Nicholas, really the Capital Development Board makes it a three-legged stool, right? So how can the Capital Development Board get involved, and what can they do to help kind of round out this idea of partnership?
I like that three-legged stool analogy. Kind of going piece by piece, the first part where the Capital Development Board or other, I'll call them end users, play is having the understanding that it's not in isolation. This is a big system approach. You have the end users, you have the utilities or whoever's providing the different services, be it sewer, water, electricity, and also the regulatory landscape that they're in. All of those have to play and be connected. And an important piece to this too is that you have to start those communications as early as possible. It's very easy for certain entities to go down individual paths and not have that broader picture. And since these projects are so multifaceted, as we've discussed throughout, having those conversations early and identifying and continuing those discussions of what needs to be considered and all the requirements, be it funding, be it logistics, be it timing, all those things understood up front will really set the project up for success and obtain the value that all the parties are looking for.
Perfect. So now you have it. Three pretty sharp, very articulate gentlemen up here. They're going to be out in the hall for your questions. So obviously, as we go throughout the day, pull them aside, grab them if you have any follow-ups. But we appreciate your time this morning. Gentlemen, thank you. And we'll turn it back over to Ken.